This is the G Podcast with your host, Tommy B.
But my favorite era would probably be the post-disco era. And that's that era, and Talib, you describe it as the boogie era.
Yeah.
And I see that more now. We didn't know what it was back then, but it was more of, okay, disco was on the decline, and R&B was really starting to come to the forefront. And the other thing about black music back then was black music was switching over from AM to FM. So you had more stations during that period come over to FM. I mean, Atlanta didn't have an FM station. And I've talked about this on the show before. I grew up on an AM station, WAOK, which still exists. It's a news talk station. And that was my station for finding music. I spent a lot of time listening to radio Monday through Friday. I'm listening to the hits on the weekend. You get a little bit of everything. You get the jazz, you get the Gil Scott-Heron, you get a little bit of everything. And that's the way, if you listen to black radio, that's how you grew up. In the 80s, or I say 78, 79, the funk was always there. Agreed. Ohio players, always there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just different, man. And I'd love some input from you guys. From my standpoint, rap hadn't really caught on as, even though it was there, it didn't own its own, it didn't own the slide. It was there, it got played, but still R&B was big. But you had artists like, I remember Cameo really coming on strong. You had, going on into the college years, Evelyn Champagne King. You had Kashif, who was really starting to come on strong. But the difference was, in a lot of cases, and Tanya B couldn't be here. I wish Tanya B was here because she lived in the North. Talib, you lived in the North. Disco wasn't big for black people in the South, okay? The four on the floor, and Talib, you DJ, I DJ'd. You put the four on the floor at a black Southern party, they gonna walk off. Now, just like I maybe appreciate a song like You're the One for Me by D-Train, even though it was it seemed big nationally, it wasn't huge
Right.
in the South. That's kind of give you an idea. It was known, but it wasn't massive. The bigger D-Train, this is gonna sound crazy, and jump in if you know the song, Something's on Your Mind. That D-Train song did better in the South for D-Train than You're the One for Me, which was more of a club song.
To believe that, because it was a groove.
It was a groove.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the four on the floor thing, and I don't want to just say, okay, we were all funk, but the passing of Peabo Bryson this week, Peabo was big here. And, Peabo spent a lot, really pretty much, for 50 years, Peabo was in Atlanta. You had, he was on a label called Bang Records. Bang also had Brick. Brick, I'm not sure who else was on Bang, but I do know primarily you had Peabo and the Daz Band, Brick were, with Duzik and Daz, the songs. But Peabo really was a big part of the Atlanta music scene. You had Isaac Hayes was here. Gene Carn was here.
Still is.
Yeah, it still is here. It's a matter of, yeah, absolutely. But you had a lot of artists moving here. They were here in the 70s. They stayed through the 80s. And Atlanta embraced them. Maynard Jackson and that whole music scene, he embraced it. The city of Atlanta, the mayors, Shirley Franklin's husband, David, I think it's her ex-husband, David Franklin, he
Richard Pryor.
He managed some of these groups. So I say all that to say, even though a lot of people will say Atlanta is all about Luda and it's all about that scene of Welcome to Atlanta, it really happened way before that. And that leads me to the fact that boogie was really my thing. That era, it was really a big part of my influence when it came to music. And it's unfortunate, man, because when people say Atlanta, they think of Southern hip hop. They think Outkast. They think, of course, I mentioned Luda. they think Future, they think all the rappers, but they forget about the fact that before that, hell,
Come on. You know,
it was
Georgia,
big.
yeah, Georgia as a state has had a rich musical history, from James Brown to um, um, Little Richard to the Allman Brothers. You know, so yeah, there's, you know, and so there's no, when we talk about music and musical influences, you know, the reason why the hip hop was able to really take hold in Atlanta like it did was because of the work that Cameo did. You know,
Yes.
we had guys
Yeah.
like Eddie Irons and, you know, all these folks that were around on the scene, SOS Band. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
So this is, you know, there was always music culture here in Atlanta. Plus the fact that Atlanta had a lot of nightclubs